This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
We like themes here, motifs at the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
Do we?
So to continue a theme from a week ago, how on earth did Duke not win a championship last year with both Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple on the same roster? It's kind of unbelievable.
Why are you sinking the knife on Cooper on a day like this? I mean, you got to bring that
Not
up.
on Cooper, more on
really?
Duke.
Because he's the one that missed the game-winning shot in that one. And,
Well,
but that's me
that.
now.
There
that's
is
me
that, but
yeah, okay. Just try and stick
they
that
all
in.
gave up the 14-point lead to Houston.
They did. And I think the last, 5, we're getting off topic here. This is what happens, right?
We're talking about Con Knipple and Cooper Flagg today, if you hadn't guessed.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of many things. Let's get right into it with what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
See what I have to deal with. Cooper Flagg scores nearly 100 points in 2 games, putting him squarely back into the Rookie of the Year mix. We'll break the race down as it stands right now against Con Knipple with a handful of games left to play. Mark Cuban stirs things up with accusations levied at Jason Kidd, and tonight we ask, is it something or nothing? With a look at pregame handshakes and NBA MVP awards. That's what's on the show. Mike, now who's on the show?
On the show today, having to deal with me just as you do on a week-after-week basis, Kevin Gray, the one and the only from the All-City DLLS crew. KG, we appreciate you joining us. A perfect night for you to make it across town from the AAC to join us here in the building at WFA. We appreciate that very, very much, and I'm sure you appreciated what you had a chance to see on the floor this evening from Cooper Flagg. You were there to see it all go down. Flagg and LeBron James battling back and forth, both of them very nearly with triple doubles, and Flagg gets the better of the KG veteran that LeBron James is. Unbelievable performance. What was it like to see it in person?
Well, as the kids like to say, Cooper Flagg's got aura, and all the aura was on display at the American Airlines Center tonight. I mean, the youngest player in NBA history to go for 45, 5, and 5, out-dueling the king, LeBron James, and Cooper Flagg now 96 points in his last 2 games. It's unbelievable to think that a 19-year-old can be capable of putting up these kinds of numbers, and to do so tonight with the kind of ease at which he did it with. He continues to defy all expectations, and for this Mavericks team, continue to solidify that he is the present and the future for a team that is looking to get back to its championship ways, hopefully, sooner than later, and he gives them a foundation to obviously do that.
96 points. Only Wilt Chamberlain ever scored more in a 2-game span as a rookie. Wilt had a 111-point span, a 109-point span, a 99-point span, and a 96-point 2-game span. The only 4 times in NBA history any rookie, Michael, Larry, Magic, LeBron, anybody, the only rookie to ever score more in a 2-game span than Cooper Flagg just did was Wilt Chamberlain way back in time. It's unbelievable what we've seen this kid do, and he talked after the game that it was a little bit of a statement, if not intentionally so, certainly on the back end, looking back at the last 72 hours, he made a statement to NBA Rookie of the Year voters that he should be the guy.
Yeah, if you're looking for any type of closing argument, I mean, he has provided that in the last couple of games. And yes, Con Knipple's had a fantastic year leading the NBA in 3-pointers. His efficiency has been fantastic. But as you started to lay out, when you start putting your name next to the likes of Michael, Wilt, Larry, LeBron, the one-namers in the league, yeah, you are on your way to winning, at least in my mind, an estimation, a Rookie of the Year, where he's now averaging over 21 points per game and putting together the kinds of stat lines that you rarely see for a 10-year vet, let alone someone who is just now 19 years old.
I do want to dig into the race a little bit because Mike and I got into it like earlier on this evening. Again, this was before he dropped 45.
I was going to say, in fairness to you, this was before.
Oh, trust me, I'm bringing the caveats.
Halftime.
I'm bringing the caveats, all right? No, but like in reality, I feel like a lot of people when they get into the awards debate, especially in the NBA, forget that a lot of this is media-driven and narrative-driven. And the Hornets have kind of been one of the darlings of the NBA this year. They've been a great story. They were projected to win 26 games. They're probably going to double that, or at least get close to doubling that before the season's out. And Knipple's been a huge storyline where that's concerned. So I don't want to diminish what he did heading into it. And he's been healthier. I think a lot of people forget midway through the season, Flagg had the injury that kept him out of roughly 7 games or so. Right. So he came back and kind of took time to reestablish himself, while Knipple has been steady this whole time. Now, granted, this whole thing just flipped this week. We still have 4 games left to kind of decide this. Knipple has every chance to sit there and say, I need to put up 40 to keep my team in a play-in chase. But, Kevin, when you look at the race and how you see arguments shaping and whatnot, how close do you think this thing can be? Or do you think Flagg pretty much just secured it with this last performance here?
I think it's still really close. I mean, if you look at the straw poll that ESPN put out just here recently, Knipple received 80 first-place votes to Cooper's 20, which I thought was a little alarming given how good Cooper Flagg has been when he's been healthy this year. And obviously, normally in Rookie of the Year races, you're not accounting for team success. This is about which rookie had the best individual year, regardless of what the team circumstances are. And this race reminds me a lot of 2003 when you had LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony battling it out for that Rookie of the Year. Carmelo Anthony's Nuggets had better team success, but it was very apparent who the best player in that rookie class was, and it was LeBron James in circumstances in Cleveland that obviously weren't great. So it's going to be a very, very tight race down at the end. Obviously, Knipple, with some of the records that he's been breaking, he's already broken the franchise record for threes in Charlotte Hornet history. He's leading the NBA in threes. The efficiency, as we talked about, is there. But Cooper Flagg is doing everything on a team where he wasn't expected to have to be the guy that leads the team in points, rebounds, and assists throughout the course of an 82-game season. If all had went well for this team, Cooper Flagg would have been able to rely on the likes of Anthony Davis and a returning Kyrie Irving to be a contributor to a team that was hopefully competing for a potential play-in spot or maybe a top 6 spot. But he has now had to take on the load of being the guy facing everyone's best defense every night, and he's still finding a way to put up those kinds of numbers. So he's been special.
Yeah, I don't think that team success should matter in a Rookie of the Year evaluation. Every other award in all sports, it should matter. But Rookie of the Year, necessarily, if you are involved in that discussion at the outset, it's because you were drafted to a bad team. Period. Football, basketball, on some level, hockey and baseball, but obviously rookies work different in those 2 leagues. But certainly in football and basketball, if you were in this conversation, almost guaranteed you were drafted to a bad team. The fact that the Hornets ended up being good this year has something to do with Knipple. It does not have everything to do with Knipple. There are several layers to why the Charlotte Hornets are good. It's not just about Con. And the fact that the Mavs are bad isn't necessarily reflective of Cooper Flagg or the season that he has had. If you look at the impacts of each of the 2 players, I think Flagg's impact is better. If this were a straight-up tie, if their impacts were truly equal, and you want to use it as a tiebreaker, by all means. I don't think that's the scenario that we're in.
But I think it's important that he gets one of these stat lines in a win. A lot of people kind of hand wave away big point total. I know, that's what I'm saying. It's important to get the win here. Like when he did it against the Magic, it's like, okay, fine, you still lost by 15. A lot of people hand wave away in losses that points are kind of garbage time. Well, he picked up 10 in the 4th quarter when they're really down by 20.
Trying to lose, though.
I know. But that's part of the push and pull of this entire narrative. But they're trying to lose because they kind of flubbed a trade. And we got to get into some of the comments that minority owner Mark Cuban has said about Jason Kidd this week. Stay with us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
The Rangers get swept in their first home series of the season by the Cincinnati Reds, falling today 2-1. Texas only scored 4 runs in their last 3 games and will start a series against the Mariners tomorrow. And former Stars head coach Pete DeBoer is now the head coach of the Islanders, taking over for Patrick Waugh, who was fired this afternoon. So DeBoer was fired for essentially mishandling a superstar in Jake Ottinger in a big playoff series. I'm not about to sit there and say that Kidd is next on the hot seat, but he is also the longest tenured head coach in the area right now and came under pretty strict criticism from minority owner Mark Cuban. Mike, what did you make of everything that went down earlier this week?
I feel like a lot of people feel like Kidd had something to do with the trade. And that feeling, I think, is just largely based on the way that Luka Doncic has interacted with him, or the lack thereof, obviously, over the course of the couple of times that he has come back to Dallas, or when Dallas has gone to LA. I think people have felt like there is some saltiness between the two of them. So when Cuban said this, I think a lot of Mavs fans went, well, that tracks. KG, how did you hear it? What do you think about that dynamic and how much Kidd certainly says he wasn't involved, says he found out at the 11th hour. Do you believe him?
So what's interesting about all this is Kidd has always said that he knew about the trade in the 11th hour. But that wasn't the accusation that Mark Cuban leveled at him in this particular podcast that he went on. The accusation was he, along with Nico Harrison, stood up and wanted Luka Doncic to be traded, to which Jason Kidd has never answered for on if he actually wanted Luka Doncic to be traded. And if he did, why did he want him to be traded, and what was the reasoning for it? To me, at least in my estimation, that question has not been asked of Jason Kidd, nor has it been answered by him. He has just continually said, I wasn't involved in the process. I knew about the trade in the 11th hour, but did you want him traded? Because to me, if you did want him traded, I had to keep that same energy that I kept toward Nico Harrison, which is if you advocated and wanted this superstar to be traded, you got to go too, because in no world should have that player been traded under the circumstances that he was. So until he answers that question, at least to me, I think there'll still be a question on whether or not Jason Kidd had something to do with Luka Doncic being traded.
What do you think is the end game? And not to necessarily gamify this whole thing, but Cuban has picked his spots when he's decided to come up and discuss this trade at length. And granted, he's not held back in any estimation. In fact, he's probably becoming more emboldened over time, especially with his remarks about wanting to, or discussing about not want, or regretting who he sold to was the specific verbiage that he used. What do you think Cuban gains from this specifically about maybe positioning amongst the fans? Is there any kind of get back from this, or is he just kind of playing both sides to some degree here?
Well, I think in a number of instances, it feels like he's hurt by the fact that he has no say in basketball decisions, and whether he's trying to burn the rest of it to the ground on the way to collecting another maybe some odd $1 billion as he gets potentially bought down, because for folks who don't know, he can get bought down at any point to 7% from the 27% ownership that he has right now, and collect an extra, billion some odd dollars, potentially on his way out the door. So I think it kind of just boils down to he likes the sound of his own voice, because he's gone on multiple podcasts for months now saying essentially the exact same things. I regret who I sold the team to. This trade happened. I didn't know about it. I wasn't a part of it. So I don't know necessarily what his end game is, other than continuing to hear the sound of his own voice and trying to make himself sound like he's some type of victim here when, hey, buddy, you sold the team. You hired Jason Kidd, you hired Nico Harrison, and most importantly, you sold the team to your homeboy and your homegirl on a discount in exchange for running basketball operations, and you got iced out. So you must have gotten hurt along the way with that. And honestly, I don't think a lot of Mavericks fans really have any sympathy for him at this particular point, no matter how much he continues to discuss it.
And I don't know that a whole lot of sympathy is necessary, because even though he may not have been the person who made the trade, he may not have been the owner when the trade was made, he may not have been the GM when the trade was made, he may not have been the coach when the trade was made, all of the links in the chain do anchor back to Mark Cuban. They all, in some form or fashion, start with Cuban. So, may not have been his decision, and it does seem very clear that he disagrees with the decision, as does pretty much everybody not named Nico Harrison and perhaps Jason Kidd, but it was still Cuban's decision to sell the team, decided who he sold him to, decided who he hired for GM, decided who he hired for head coach. All of these things anchor back to Mark Cuban. So whatever effort he's making to shirk the blame It only works so much, I think.
And I do want to ask real quick the question that Jason Kidd has been asking, which is when are we going to move on? It's ironic that this weekend is kind of juxtaposed. Oh, I know. But it's ironic that this weekend is juxtaposed.
Ask the Boston Red Sox fans how long they talked about Babe Ruth getting
Listen, it took 80 some odd years, 86 I think, to win the next title. I get it. But I'm also kind of saying juxtaposing this weekend with Luka's injury and Cooper Flagg going from 96 in 2 games. This is about as much of a launch pad as you're going to get, especially around this time, where Mavs fans can finally sink their teeth into a new talent, Kevin.
I agree, and it will always hurt to see 77 in a Laker uniform, not just because he isn't here anymore, but to the team that he's actually playing with in terms of the Los Angeles Lakers. But in some respects, yes, the moving on is in the form of watching this 19-year-old budding superstar be able to carry the mantle of the franchise and be the franchise player for the next 15 years, and how quickly this team can begin to win around said budding superstar in Cooper Flagg, because ultimately that's what we're all going to judge here is how much winning did this team do with the generational get out of jail free card that they got in the form of Cooper Flagg, and how quickly they can do it. That's all we're going to judge them on at this particular point.
Absolutely. All right, stay with us in the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. It's time to go something or nothing. We got a lot to talk about with college basketball. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Time now for a little game we like to call Something or Nothing. Concept is simple. I've got a series of situations or statements for our panel. They have to decide whether it's something or nothing. Don't overcomplicate it, Mike. All right, let's start things off. Pre-game handshakes between opponents. Obviously a bit of a hot-button topic given the altercation between Don Staley and Gino Auriemma in the semis on Friday. Put simply, are pre-game handshakes and meetings worth getting this angry about? Kevin, is this something or nothing?
Something. Show some respect. Do the handshake, do the formalities. Let's play a good game. Let's all have fun. So I'd say it's something for sure.
Mike?
I'm good with doing the pregame handshake and showing respect. I don't think it was worth the aggravation that we saw from Gino Auriemma over the weekend over all of this. That was way overblown. I haven't seen anybody really do an analysis of whether he was actually waiting for the 3 minutes he says he was waiting for.
I'm sure it felt like 3.
Obviously, eventually she did come shake his hand because there is video of that. I don't know how long he waited. I'm not sure how much that really matters. Yes, do the pregame handshake. No, Gino, as he's kind of apologized for, kind of.
In a Gino way.
He's copped to it at least a little bit.
All right, let's move on here. Second statement. To the NBA, given the current field of MVP candidates, that will mean the last 8 NBA most valuable players were not born in the U.S. Kevin, is this something or nothing?
I'll say nothing. I mean, the NBA is a global game now. So I'm not surprised that the last now, what will be 8, haven't been outside of the U.S. The NBA has wanted it this way. Is the result.
Mike?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great thing. I think it's something, but I think it's a good thing. It's reflective of exactly what, obviously, the Dream Team did in '92 to globalize the game. This is the byproduct of that. It's not like we've seen 8 MVPs come from one other country over the course of the last 8 years. It's been spread across the globe. I think it's a positive, and I think at some point an American's obviously going to work back into that discussion as well, but I don't think it's a problem in any way, shape, or form.
I think some of it is also play style, but also you can't really say that these are #1 picks from overseas that have been brought into teams where they're supposed to be big, because again, Joker developed and SGA developed. Both these guys came up through the system, so it's not like this is Victor Wembanyama every time coming over and changing the league, but God knows the way he's playing, he'll be around for a while.
One's coming, yeah.
Yeah. And last but not least, challenge overturn success rate across all leagues within the last year or so hovers a little above 50%. That includes ABS, which has been lighting up social media and throwing umpires under the bus. Mike, does that number surprise you, and is that number something or nothing?
I guess it probably doesn't come as a surprise, only because it's being arbitrated by a human being, and it's also being challenged by a human being. They're probably about equally as likely to be correct, and there you go. So that kind of tracks.
Kevin?
I think it's something. We've been wanting calls to get right, so take the time to get it right, and if there's things that'll help us get it right, I'm all for it. So I'd say it's something for sure.
It does mean 50% of them were wrong, which means we're 50% better than we were along the way.
It is nice, though, that the ABS actually has a delineated box where it's like you just go, it's the Wimbledon system. It's either in or it's out. It's something clear cut. I was interested trying to find or parse the difference between like challenging whether it's a catcher or not and how much those kind of influence it. But across the league, I think what it really shows is when you're challenging things, these things are borderline anyway. You're trying to get the benefit of a lot of these calls, and I just don't want people to go into ABS and baseball in general right now and sit there and think, well, I see 5 clips online. The umpires are clearly incompetent. You know what I mean? That's not what's happening. Everyone is kind of borderline good at this thing, and it's splitting those hairs that makes the difference. Kevin, again, on Easter Sunday, thank you for taking the time to join us. It's a pleasure having you in studio. Can't wait to have you again. Mike's final take coming up
Happy
next.
Easter, buddy.
Just to peel the curtain back a little bit, we were going into this weekend right around Wednesday or Thursday thinking this was going to be a Rangers show. Thankfully, it wasn't. that was a rough homestand, but judging by how they played the first few games, hopefully the offense can find its groove again.
9 games.
And they're going to need to with the Mariners and Dodgers coming up next.
Yeah.
All right, Mike's final take.
Speaking of teams that need to kind of get their act together, your Dallas Stars all of a sudden find themselves in a little bit of a sticky spot. 5 games remaining in this season, and their lead over the Minnesota Wild for the 2-3 debate, if you will, in the Central Division is down to 2 points. 2 points is all that separates Dallas and Minnesota. And they play on Thursday. 5 games left in the season. Dallas has got to get a couple of wins, and Thursday feels like almost a must-win. Obviously, if they win the other 4, depending on what happens with Minnesota, they've got the tiebreaker right now. They're still in a decent spot because they've got the lead, but it's getting a little nervy. If you're the Dallas Stars, if you're their fans right now, like, hey, win on Thursday or you got some trouble.
I was going to say, Rangers and Stars have given us a chance not to pay attention to the Mavs, and the Mavs are returning the favor. That's what happened this week. Thanks so much for the
ultimate win on Thursday.
Thanks so much for watching on this Easter Sunday. We'll see you guys next week.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.